those names that I'm seeing for the first time, welcome to the fall webinar series. We're trying to bring authors from around the world who do Indology-based research. And the goal is to kind of bring these folks forth for those who may not know them, right? And we know in this fast changing realm that is academia, videos and talks are cited by students as part of research. So this is one of the initiatives that the Indology Academy is bringing to people, because there's a dire need to know folks that are, not in the same country as us. So here we are doing that. The other thing about Indology Academy, I want to mention that the first issue of the International Journal of Indology is out, and papers are under the review process for the fall. And one other announcement about that, Ayodhya's architecture and history is going to be the topic for spring 2024. So if you know academics interested in that topic, please get in touch with us, or I'll link the website. Folks can go and read the announcement also. So the journal is a big news because of course there was a need, and someone had to do it. So here we are. Indology took that up, and we're doing that under the grace of many, professors, retired and otherwise. Dr. Rana Singh is one of them. So I want to just mention that also. Last but not the least, one of the things that I used to do at my as a university employer a few years ago was immersion tours. So we will continue with that under Indology Academy, and this will be a chance for not just adults to go study cultures and see how colonization has taken place and how globalization works in specific areas and things like that. But this is also going to be open for students should they be interested. So those are the things going on with us. Again, welcome to the fall series. Today we have Professor Anita Singh with us, and I'll just do the introductions. My colleague was supposed to do it, but she's under the weather a little bit, so I'm going to go ahead and do it. Anita ji. Anita ji has published 2 books. First, that's what I'm going to start with. The topic and the book of interest to us is The Economic Condition of Women in Ancient India, and the other is Female Slaves in Early India. And this is a really great topic of relevance today, as we see feminism being studied from various angles. And again, Anita ji brings in the Indology perspective of the role of women and how much they contributed, right? I'll let her do the talking, but this is very much relevant to our times. She is an assistant professor of history at the Arya Mahila College in Varanasi, and she can tell us more about herself and jump into the topic. So before I open up, just a little bit of housekeeping, questions and whatnot, please feel free to put that in the chat. But as Anita ji comes to a close with her talk, we will open it up. I mean, if you're a small enough group, we can just kind of unmute and ask and have that interaction. Okay. So thank you, everyone. Oh, hi, Dr. Menon, another Indology faculty in attendance. Thank you. Anita ji, over to you, please.
Thank you, Anjali ji. First of all, a namaskar from the oldest living city on this planet, Varanasi. So greetings from this land, Varanasi. I'm Anita Singh joining here. And it is a great honor and privilege that I have been provided this platform to share my views on the topic that I have worked on. The topic is Decolonizing Feminism in Indian History. Why I chose this topic, the reason behind it, is that I've always gone through the perception, through the people and through the books, that women in India had a very pathetic condition. The colonial writing has always projected women in a condition that they are the marginalized section of the society. Like they were cornered somewhere in the social segment where their condition was always put in a judgmental form. That needs to be corrected. So this discourse of today is one step in that direction, to decolonize our minds and to bring the better picture of Indian women across the globe and put it in the academic circle so that the students of the coming generations should work more on this topic. With the blessings of Goddess Saraswati, now I would like to share my views in front of you all. I can see that I have a very learned audience here from different disciplines from across the world. So I hope I'll be able to connect with you all. Tve Vishwa Saraswati Shritayeshu Devyam. हे सरस्वती परम विदुषी देवी तुझमें सबकी आयु आश्रित है. We all depend on the learned lady, goddess Saraswati, and with her blessings, I put forward my views in front of you all. The egalitarian side of Indian knowledge system has always established the equality between man and a woman. It has always recognized the difference between a man and a woman, but it has never discriminated on that ground. Kautilya in Arthashastra says, Nastri Ratnasam Ratnam. There is no gem like a woman. She is the most precious gem that the nature has given us. In Indian knowledge system, we see that beautiful similes are there, where we see that Earth, the mother goddess, is also, the Earth has always been associated with the female form because of its creative, productive, and the given nature. Rishi Parashar is saying, has beautifully put this thing in his shloka. Rishi Parashar says that Yatha Bhumasthana Nari Tasmant Natu Dushyate, which means earth and a woman both are of same nature and it should not be polluted. There are some other similar similes. Like we have another simile in which we see that until and unless the two parts of a seed come together as equals, it will not germinate. So man and woman is also like that, two parts coming together. And when they complement each other beautifully, only then the life sustains. The life comes into being and it sustains. So we see that in Vedic knowledge system also, such complementary nature of man and woman is always endorsed and put forward and recognized. Rigveda again contemplates that a man is fortunate who has a learned companion. And if you aspire to have an excellent child, educate your wife, your female companion. But ironically, we see that this kind of the dignity and the honor that woman has always had in Indian knowledge system, over a period of time, it has lost recognition. Women has always contributed in different roles to the society, economy, to the religion, to spirituality. They have their own creative world. They have their own space. And in different aspects, we have seen women contributing to this field. But I don't know why, what went wrong where, but this has not penned down in the similar spirit as it was there in our early Indian society. Women has always been a victim of broad generalizations. They were always projected within the four walls of the house in the role of a daughter, mother, or a wife. One reason could be, as I see that, the Dharmashastric literature has always projected an ideal concept of womanhood, where they are confined to walls and they are withdrawing themselves from the open spaces or the economic spaces. But when we corroborate the similar literature with the secular literature or non-Brahminical literature, we don't see that the same picture is being, we don't see the same kind of scenario in other literatures. In archaeological sources too, we see in Arthashastra, we see in Buddhist literature, in the Jain literature, in the archaeological sources, that women are free and they are contributing and they are the pillars of the society. So let's first just have a look over their contribution and then we'll come to the topic of feminism. If we start from the early primitive society, when the society was in the nature of hunting and gathering, women were the gatherers and men were the hunters. In fact, initially both were doing the same thing, but later on the role differentiation started coming to being, and women were more in the nature of gatherers, and they were the one who discovered agriculture. They were the first potter makers. They were the first basket weavers. They were the first who started all this in the economy. And then we come to Vedic literature, we see that the land was held communally. It was not the individual ownership of land was not there. And when the land was under the communal ownership, men and women both together had contributed into it. We have examples like Apala. She is seen helping her father in agriculture. We have one reference from Satpat Brahmana, which says that a man and woman is like two parts of a grain. When they come together, it becomes a whole grain. We again have a reference from Taittiriya Brahmana, which says that man and woman is like bullock and a plow and a bullock. Like such similes are associated with agricultural activities. That again reflects on the fact that how much they are engaged in the agricultural activities. We have first example of female slaves participating in agriculture. We get it from Short Sutra. So women can be seen in different forms in agriculture and associated with cattle rearing and other husbandry activities of that period. See the word Duhita. The daughters were called Duhita. Why? Because they used to attend the cattle demands. All the cattle rearing things, milking the cow and making the milk products, attending to cattle or other requirements of the cattle were attended by the daughters of the family. So such nomenclatures, such terminologies reflect on the fact that they were actively engaged in the agricultural activities of that period. But over a period of time, we see as the agriculture became complex and with the availability of surplus production, when you had population, where you had enough population to take as hired laborers, a small section of the Gangetic Plain, I should be very specific here, a small section of women of the Gangetic Plain could afford to have hired laborers, and now they can afford to remain back to their houses, and they could withdraw from the open field work that was required for agriculture. But this, I must say that this proportion of women who withdrew from the active activities of agriculture was very insignificant. But on the basis of this insignificant proportion of women withdrawing, the entire history of women in early India was generalized that women had withdrawn from the economic activities. But I think to this day, we have the similar pattern being followed, where the agriculture and other activities of the villages, of the rural areas, I mean, you cannot imagine a state where women, these all activities are possible without the help of women folk of that area, of that region. It continues to this day. So we cannot think of women withdrawing in that period of time when the population was comparatively far less and where the sustenance was a challenge. So women contribution was indispensable. We have one reference of one term being used in that period, that is Asuraprashya, means a lady who is not touched by the rays of sun. So the number of women who were in that state of privilege, not being touched by the rays of sun, was insignificant. But yes, of course, with the coming of later Vedic age and after that, the difference between Sanutri and Asuprishya has, there was a big difference between these two. Sanutri in the Rigvedic period was the lady who was the controller of the resources. That means she was so much engaged in the economic activities that she is having the controlling power over the resources. And after the later Vedic period, we see this women receding back to being called as Asuprishya, that is not touched by the rays of sun. But then, once again, I reiterate the fact is that a larger section of the rural areas, the women were actively participating, and the story was the same, and it continues to be the same. When we see the second segment of the economy of early India, that is skilled labor, like the women who were skilled enough to participate in the economy. In our Indian knowledge system, a lady is supposed to have at least maximum 64 skills, and if she is having command over these 64 skills, she can never be, I mean, she'll be self-reliant, self-dependent, and she'll never have the scarcity or the problem of livelihood. She can sustain anywhere, and this reference we get often from Kama Sutra and other literature everywhere, that if a woman is skilled in 64 skills, then she'll never have a problem of finance or for sustenance. So women's skilled labor was visible in early India. We see women in different roles. And the one industry which incorporated the maximum women was the textile industry. And India has always shined in this industry, you know, and that is the reason we had a rich heritage of textile. We have specific references and terms that reflects on the scale of this industry, and the women, how they contributed to this industry. Like there is a word like Vayatri. Vayatri means a female weaver. Rajyatri, a female dyer. Pesaskari, a female embroiderer, the one who used to do the embroidery work. We have terms like Kantakari, women working with thorns. Bidalkari, women working with preparing baskets. Anjanakari, the today's the beauticians, you know, the ladies who have knowledge of beauty products and all this thing. They used to prepare the face packs actually. Women preparing mats. So we have such a legacy. I mean, the skilled workers who used to contribute in this field. There is another term like Ishu Katriya, a female bow and arrow maker who used to prepare arrows and bows. The Malari was the woman who used to prepare the garlands, the flower making woman. And similar references we get from, these are the references from Vedic literature, from Rig Vedic literature. And this is again corroborated by the Pali text and other literature too. In Pali text, we have one reference where a woman is assuring a dying husband that you need not worry, I'll take care of the family by carding cotton. Itinam kapasa potanam dhanuka, where a woman is seen carding cotton. So this was done both at the home level and at the state level also. Even the state industries were there. And Shastra is the best literature to reflect on it. Kautilya talks about Sutrashala, and there were Sutradhakshas, the supervisors who used to look after this thing. And I mean, I'm so glad to share this, that Kautilya had a, like for women workers working in state industry, I think he was much ahead of his time. In the Corona period, we had this concept of work from home. Sorry. I must share that Kautilya had this provision at that age, you know, where the women who could not come out of their homes, they were provided with the raw materials at their home place. And when the product was complete, a person was sent to collect the finished material back to the state industry. So these Sutrashalas had different kinds of women, the deprived women section, like the aged elderly women, like the aged Ganikas, like the widows who needed support were provided through these Sutrashalas. And the safety and security of women working in the Sutrashalas was also ensured. Kautilya in his Arthashastra is having specific provisions to ensure the safety of women working at workplace. If a person is even giving a stare at a woman at a workplace, was penalized by paying some panas as penalty. So these kind of provisions was there in that age, way back, so many years back. So that is a very surprising and very thing to be proud of our Indian history. There's a specific term like kamakara. Women engaged in state industry were called kamakaras. So these terms also denote the kind of prevalence of the women in that society, in that age. It's remarkable. We have again bleaching and washing industries were again predominant by female workers. Pottery was again, even to this day, I have seen in my village that if a man is softening the mud, the other aspects of pottery is being undertaken by the female folk of the family. They are the one who take it to dry and get it baked and then arranging it, managing it. All these other aspects of the pottery industry is taken care of the female folk. Even the industries like wine and distilling, even here we see women winemakers engaged in this industry. There's a term that has come across is Sindhu Karni. Sindhu Karni is wine distiller, female wine distiller. So we have a rich, we can see a rich contribution of women folk in this industry. Similarly, the third aspect of our economy, that is the service class. If we take up the service class, even here we see women in different roles contributing to Indian history. We see, like first we take up the teachers, like the profession to which I also belong. When we take up the teaching profession, we are again like, this is again a state, I mean, this is a area where we'll be again surprised and will be all like honored to be of this land, that we had a rich legacy of learning in India. We see the minute differences in the terminology. We have a reference, like a shloka is there, Acharyasya Stri Acharyani Puyung Itev Acharya Swam Vyakhyatri. That means Acharya is a professor, lady professor. Acharya is the wife of a professor, male professor, and Vyakhyatri is the lecturer who is delivering lecture. So this kind of distinction is being made between the different teachers, that itself makes clear that this was an established profession of that period. India is a land of learning, and we have a list of women's teachers, famous women teachers who have contributed to learning and to teaching. Two kinds of students were there in early India, Satyodhava and Brahmavadini. The Satyodhava is the one who used to enter into marriage life after finishing the learning, the education. But Brahmavadini were the section of women learners who never used to enter into married life, and they used to dedicate their entire life for teaching and learning. We have some specific references I need to quote here to bring out the idea that I want to convey. Like there is one word, Kashkritsani. Kashkritsani was a lady who had written a book on a very mystic philosophy, that is Mimamsa, and an entire school of thought had developed because of this work. And the people who used to follow this work, or the students who used to follow this school of thought, were called Kashkritsani by her name. The ladies who used to be learned were called Pandita. And there is a big section of Panditas, like the learned ladies. We have examples like Lopamudra, Bishwara, Sikta, Ghoshal, number of ladies are there. There were ladies who used to perform the yagya also, Rishikas. And we have example of Sulabha, Gargi, Maitri and all. We get similar learned ladies examples from Jainism and Buddhism too. We have bhikkhunis like Khema. We have bhikkhuni like Subhadra. She was known for her oratory skills, for delivering lectures. And these bhikkhunis had taken the learning, like they had taken the learning to another level. We have one example from Jainism, the first Tirthankara Rishabdev. His two daughters were Sundari and Brahmi. The Brahmi script of India seems to have derived its name from Brahmi, the daughter of the first Tirthankara Rishabdev. She had scaled the 64 skills that I was talking about. And Sundari was the great mathematician. We have a Jataka story where four sisters seems to have thrown an open challenge to debate on philosophy. We have similar references, like Panini talks about Shikshan Sala. These Shikshan Salas were female educational institutes, and they were run by female acharyas, and the female upadhyayas and the acharyas used to run and manage the entire educational institute, female educational institute on their own. Although co-education was also prevalent, it was quite common at that time. initiation of women was initially there, which was later on, it declined and it came to be associated with marriage ceremony. We have number of learned ladies examples from Gatha Saptasati, like Rekha, Roha, Madhavi, Anulakshmi, so many other are there. So this one teaching profession reflects on the level of learning that Indian women had in early India. The second that I can take up here is Dhatri. These Dhatris, although they were called Dhais, they had different names in different regions, but they had good knowledge of medicine and nursing. See the number of different names that we have. Ankadhatri, Maladhatri, Kridadhatri, Stanadhatri, so many Dhatris are there. They had good knowledge of child psychology. They had good knowledge of human anatomy. They used to spend their entire life taking care of the child, and the way, the different aspects of childhood were taken care of different Dhatris. They were called nurses, but their medicinal knowledge was remarkable. We have one reference of King Bimbisara of Magadha, who suffered from a disease called fistula, and he was attended by 500 nurses who were there to take care of him. Similar vet nurses examples we get from different literature, like Sangam literature also. There is a specific word over there, Sivilati, I suppose I have pronounced it right. So that shows again that these Dhatris, if we ignore these Dhatris by the name of Dhai, that they were just the Dhais looking after the children, then we'll be doing injustice to them, because they had a good knowledge of medicine, nursing, psychology, and management, and other things. Similarly, we have other services also, where we see the women folk giving their best to the state and the economy. Like the state officials were there, spies were there, espionage system. If you take the spy system itself, there was different types of spies, female spies who were there, and who used to get training from the state, and they were known for their special skills in which they were trained, and they were very much reliable. And the king and the state used to rely more on female spies than the male spies. In Indian polity also, in the Indian polity and administration, we see women in different roles. In Vedic literature also, we come across Sabha and Vidhata, the popular assemblies, and women had easy access and participation in Sabha and Vidhata. We have 7 references from Vedic literature of their attendance to Vidhata. In early India, it was expected that the best thing that a bride should have is that she should be able to speak with composure in public assemblies. She should be able to speak properly with grace and beauty in public assemblies. That means it was a common practice in those days where women used to participate in popular assemblies. We also have examples like 3 Rajyas. We have first example that we come across of Sri Rajya is of King Sargala. He was supposed to be Sri Rajyatapati of Sri Rajya, and he had participated in a Swayamvara of a Kalinga princess. We again have an example of Sri Rajya of Odisha, the Bhaumka dynasty, from 9th to 11th century AD. We have a continuous 6 female rulers who had ruled over this kingdom, and they had assumed the titles like Maharaja Dhiraja, Parameshwari, Parambhattarika, and they had assumed these titles, the sovereign titles, in their own name. Even the Chinese account, the foreign travelers account, corroborate this fact that there were 2 Sri Rajyas, one in the east and the other one in the west. So we have 6 continuous rulers from Orissa Bhaumka dynasty, and the most remarkable one among all these 6 were Bhuvana Devi and Dandi Mahadevi. They were known for their administrative acumen, their valor, and their glory. Women in early India were also trained in warfare. We have examples of women military. We get these examples from Vedic literature. We also get Similar references from archaeological sources, like from Khajuraho, from Konark, from Lakshmi Temple, that women militia was there, women military was there. The Nagas had this practice on a regular basis. They used to train the women in the military aspects. They used to decked up like men in the military attire, and they used to be a very deadly and very dangerous and very brave kind of soldiers. I mean, though there was no difference between the male soldiers and the female soldiers. So we have examples like that. Even Arthashastra, Kautilya in his Arthashastra, he says that if there is no male inheritor, the female rulers can, section of the family can inherit the kingdom. So there we get such examples, and Satavahanas, Chalukyas, we have Vakatakas in Kashmir history. We get good examples where women have been the rulers and they have set best examples in our history. When we come to administration also, there is one quotation I would like to quote. J.S. Mill, an Anglo-Indian officer, who had made an observation that if a Hindu principality was vigilantly and economically governed, if order was preserved without oppression, if cultivation was extending and people were prosperous, in 3 cases out of 4, if he found it to be under a woman's rule. So we get examples of a province being administered by a woman administrator. We get beautiful examples from Chalukya dynasty, from Kashmir Valley. So these examples again prove their administrative capacity in which they had governed the provinces, the state, and the area. We have number of examples of female attendants who contributed to the state. The different nomenclatures that were used in those days, like Paricharika, Athachari. Paricharika was the attendant. Athacharika, Ithi was the personal attendant. We have Prerna Darika, woman doorkeeper. We have Sahaika, like the helpers. We have Dhatis, like the nurses I talked about. They were in different roles, like lamp bearer, fan bearer, pitcher bearer, rug bearer, umbrella bearer, golden staff bearer. We have number of female attendants in different roles and contributing in different capacities. In Digha Nikaya, we find that a retinue prince is like the prince retinue is exclusively of female folk. The entire attendant of a prince is the female folk is contributing in that area. We have a reference of Mahapajapati Gautami when she went to meet Buddha. She joined Buddhism along with her 500 attendants, female attendants. So that was the number itself is enough to depict that women had contributed in this form. The female bodyguards, again, we need to talk about that also. King Ajashatru, he says that in Buddha Ghosha, there is a reference where King Ajashatru, he thinks that there is no fear for a man when he is accompanied by women escorts, and he can go anywhere safely. He is free and he's safe if he is escorted by women. And he himself was always surrounded by around 500 female escorts. Even in Indica, Megasthenes talks about this kind of thing, and he relates how the king's persons were entrusted to women who were brought from different families. So we have such female bodyguards, and they were quite reliable, and they used to dedicate their life to the safety of king and to the kingdom. Then I come to the next aspect, that is female slaves in early India. I have a book on it because when I was working on it, when I was writing my thesis work, Economic Condition of Women in Early India, I found one remarkable thing of Indian history is that we always have had a liberal approach towards the, I should not say slavery, towards the Dasa and Dasis of Indian history. I don't think the word slavery of English justifies the kind of the kind of attitude, the, the outlook that Indian people had towards their slaves. This was there in early history, and even to this day, I find this thing in our Indian gentry, that the slaves are not the slaves as such, they are considered as a part of their family. And when I was working on my thesis, I discovered that there are so many laws, there are so many aspects of our literature which reflects on the fact that the early Spritikaras, the early lawgivers, were very liberal towards Indian Indian slaves and female slaves in particular. In India, we had slaves of different kinds. Like we had domestic slaves and we had productive slaves also who used to work in the fields. But the total number of slaves, the domestic and the productive slaves, never outnumbered the total population as it happened in Greek. In we have a comparison of dasis with the bahus of the family, the daughter-in-laws of the family. The work of a daughter-in-law of a family was called Sunsi Bhoga, and the work of a dasi of the same family was called Dasi Bhoga. And the family used to take care of the life of the slave, female slave, and his entire family, his coming generations, in all aspects. Like a female slave working in a family was provided enough safety and security, and her dignity was also a matter of concern. A male person violating her chastity was also considered an offense, and that was penalized. So that kind of outlook was there for the slaves in Indian history, in our society. The lawgivers in our history have made liberal provisions for the slaves in India. Like they can get emancipation from slavery. They can be free from the slavedom. There were rituals, and very simple rituals were there by which they can gain freedom. And they were not oppressed the way it was there in the West, in the other part of the world. So when we have a comparison, when we see the two slavery, the kind of slavery that was there in the West and the kind of slavery that existed in India, we see a wide difference. We see a stark difference between the two, and that needs to be addressed. We have different slaves by different names, female slaves, like Paralepika, Pralepika, Vilopika, Anulopika, Manipali, Dwarpali, Gehadasi, Kumbhadasi, Vihikothika, that means the one who used to husk the dust, was called by a specific term, Vihikothika Dasi. So this again reflects on the fact that these female slaves of the family were part of the family. See, even Buddha, in his discourse, he has given guidelines for both, for the masters and for the slaves. He is giving some guidelines to be followed by the masters too, that they should take care of the slaves in the family. And in his guidelines, he's talking about the basic things that needs to be taken care of, like their well-being, their health, their footing, their other basic needs that needs to be taken care of by the masters. And on the other hand, he is giving the guidelines for the slaves also, that they should take care of the master's needs also. That means they both used to complement each other. They were catering to the demands of each other, and they were in a state of supporting each other. At the same time, we have references when we see that some female slaves were mishandled by the masters. We get references from Buddhist literature, but there are also references where even the masters are sometimes they have a bad experience from the female slaves of the family. So the story goes either ways. You know, it happens to this day also. We have a similar kind of experience in our society. Sometimes the masters are at the receiving end. Sometimes the house helpers, the domestic helpers, are at the other end. So that way we see that the soft corner, the the feeling of taking care of the female slaves of the family is, I mean, I don't think anywhere, in any other part of the world, we see a similar gesture as we see in Indian society. So there is a big section of female slaves by the name Dasis who were there in early India. And their contribution, if we just go by the word Dasi and if we ignore it, I think again we'll be doing injustice to them. Because the whole lot of work that they used to do is now being done by women, and on the basis of which they are called the liberated, empowered, and emancipated women. Because the whole lot of work was done in that age by the Dasis, and this term Dasi should be taken in a broader perspective, then we'll be able to do justice to the women workers in early India. Then we have another section of women workers, like the women entertainers. Now, this itself was again a big industry. We have different kinds of women workers in this industry, like female performing artists. The actors were called natas. The dancers were called nartakas. The musicians were called gyana vadakas. The storytellers were called vakibanas, like vachana means telling the story. Then we had kustalavas, who were the bard people. We have rope dancers like plavaka. Plavaka means rope dancers. And we have a whole list of women performing artists who used to move on in groups, performing their art in different places. We have Vaishyas, we have Ganikas, we have courtesans, and we have other people. We have an example of Samana, a festival in Vedic period. This festival, if we understand this festival, we'll see the kind of liberal state of society that India had. In this Samana, the girls, especially the spinster girls, the young girls, used to come in their best forms. And they were supposed to perform here, they were supposed to dance here, and they used to seek their partners here in a very liberal approach. And the parents used to, like, even with the parents' blessings, they used to come to this festival, and they used to seek their partners freely in an open environment. We don't find this kind of customs even to this day in India, but that was there in Vedic period. So we see that women had different roles and different contributions. But over a period of time, we see the Indian female section getting marginalized. What could be the reason? I tried to explore that also and would like to share with you all. First of all, what I would like to share is that we should not look for a definite answer. There could not be a definite answer. There cannot be a complete or a final statement. We should not be judging women on a weighing scale and categorizing as good or bad. There's nothing like good or bad. We need to recognize the Indian ideal that existed in Indian society, their contribution in time and space. We need to recognize their contribution and the sensitivity that the Indian society had towards the women section, towards the women workers, towards the women as such. When we look into Indian history and try to get the answer, we are misled. Why? Because we had always adopted a Western model of feminism which failed to answer these questions. The Western model of feminism misled the Indian gentry, and it taught us to hate our own history, and it taught us to associate women only with associating women with only household work. So this model of feminism needs to, we need to talk more about it, and we need to understand why this has misled us. When we come to feminism, these days this has become a buzzword, and it is in full swing. And children, the students in my class also, they all love to call themselves as feminist without understanding this word. This feminism has its origin from West. And West has had a requirement of this revolutionary movement because women was in a state of oppression and they needed liberation. So there was a incident that took place. I call it a historical accident that took place in West, and that is the end of feudalism. And after the end of feudalism, there was an emergence of capitalism. Because of industrialization, there was a capitalism, and capitalism led to consumerism. So this was the first incident which was the ground for coming of feminism. And the second was when Catholic religion was under attack and Protestant religion protested against Catholicism. And this coming of Protestantism gave a space to women, West women, the oppressed West women. So they were free sexually, they were free socially, they were free economically, and they were looking for their space, and they needed that space, very much they needed this space, and feminism was an outcome of that. The third thing which was a milestone was Marxism, coming of Marxism. Because Marxism again was one important factor which led to feminism in West. Marx has considered, like for this ideology, they have all these isms, I suppose. And though they first see that there is a state of conflict, and the two components are in a state of conflict, and then they need this gap needs to be built up. So man and woman was also seen as in a state of conflict. This ism had brought man and woman opposite to each other, and as a result, woman was seen as the suppressed class, the marginalized class, being oppressed by the men folk, and they now they needed liberation, they needed space, they needed freedom, and that came in the name of feminism. And the fallout was revolutionary feminism that came up in Europe in 1960s. And postmodernism again helped it better, and it gave a new breadth to feminism. But seeing the scenario in West, feminism was required. But if the same model is adopted in Indian society, in Indian history, and if we try to see the answers in this perspective, I think then we'll be misled. Why? Because Indian society was never consumer-based. We had always been after learning, after knowledge. West has always been after materialistic things. For them, materialism was their goal. For us, learning was our goal. So if we see in this aspect, man and woman in a conflict state, and then giving to resolve the conflict, we need a ism. That state of thing was not required in Indian society, because we saw right now that the kind of contribution that women had, they were never like a marginalized section in Indian society. They were very much the part and parcel of the economy, of the society, and contributing throughout the ages till the modern time. It's only an insignificant part of the elite class of the Gangetic Plains who had surplus, who could afford hired labor, had receded back, withdrawn from the state economy or from the economy as such. But the other common classes, the women of the rural areas, the women of the peninsular India, women of the mountain regions, women of the tribal folk, were actively contributing to the economy. And we cannot generalize on the basis of one insignificant section that the entire women folk of Indian society had this kind of state. So Indian knowledge system has always seen man and woman not in a state of conflict, but rather in a beautifully complementing each other. It's on the shoulders of the man and woman that the civilizations have been built. So we need to rethink and recorrect ourselves here. And we need to take this discourse further, that we need to develop our own model. And I think we should not be naming it as feminism, but it should be the concept of womanhood that was there in early India, and what kind of ideals that we are looking forward in the present scenario, in the present society. And if we need to have first of all, I don't think we need a ideal womanhood as such, but yes, we need some we need to recognize the contribution of the women of Indian society, and we need to drive our own ideals from our culture, from our society, from our history, so that that is rooted in our soil, that is grounded in our soil, and that is what would be lasting, would be indigenous, and would be more suitable to our demands and would cater to our aspirations. So when we see in this scenario, even in modern time, if you see that even in contemporary society, the girls are somehow in a state of confusion. They don't know what sort of ideal they should look for. Changing their attire, if that is emancipation, so again, the youth of our nation would not be heading towards the right direction. It's the emancipation of the mind. We have beautiful references from our history. We have one example from Jainism, where a beautiful lady, and so many princes are there who are seeking her hand for marriage, but she, through an example, setting a best answer that this external beauty is perishable. You should look after for the inner beauty, and that inner beauty is your knowledge, your learning. So this land has always been a land of learning, and the women folk the women folk of India, they had their own creative world. You have Bhakti movement. In Bhakti movement, again, we see the women. We cannot call it Indian feminism. It was the Bhakti leaders of India. They were not talking about man and woman, who is more powerful, who is more strong. They had gone beyond that. They were talking about the cosmos, the eternal space. They were talking about the spirituality that is taking you to moksha. So these ladies like Andala, like Mirabai, they are taking the Indian womanhood to an eternal bliss, to a heavenly spiritual peace, relating yourself to moksha, taking you to the moksha level. So we need to set these kind of ideals for our youth, so that the state of confusion in which they are right now should get a better direction. We have such examples like Lakshmi Bai. See, we go on talking about the valor of Lakshmi Bai, but yes, indeed, that needs to be recognized. But apart from her valor, we need to recognize her other aspects also. She was a lady from Bundelkhand, and Bundelkhand was a land where there was water scarcity. And she was in a state, in a time and a space where there was scarcity of water, where men, the maximum men had died in the battle, and the widows were there. And she had a gentry of different caste, from different religion, from different sects, and she had to manage in all this, and she had to fight against the Britishers. So see her managerial skills. See the way she is addressing the social challenges of the society. She has she has to face a challenge where she is having multiple problems, and she is addressing to all. We need to take this in front of our children, so that they get the better ideals of womanhood in India. We have Ahilya Bai. We hardly speak about Ahilya Bai. Ahilya Bai was a ruler. She has a contribution towards history, polity, and other things, but she was the one who was the most innovative lady of her time. She is innovating with textile. She is doing with it architecture. She is building ghats. She is renovating a temple. She is inspiring the people. She is giving occupation and new professions to her people of that belt. The entire village of Maheshwar, I had been to that place recently, and I discovered the way people worship her. And indeed, she deserves that. Ahilya Bai has given, she is a lady who has contributed in a way in different aspects that needs to be taught to our youth. That is the Indian womanhood, the ideal of Indian womanhood. See, Avanti Bai, we have Durga Bai, we have Chand Bibi, we have Didda, we have so many other female figures who can inspire our generations and the coming generations. These were the people who were contributing in adverse situations. They had so many other challenges to face. And they had come up with such remarkable achievements. So in my work, in my thesis work, when I was working, I could see that women had been participating in economy in different roles. I could just sum up some of the things here. I wanted to talk about slaves more. I had some other, because I've written a book on it, I have so much legal aspects to cover. Because if legally also, if you analyze the women condition, you will see that the the ancient lawgivers have made good, very liberal and very advanced approaches towards women. The way her safety and security are addressed in our Spritikaras by the lawgivers, that needs to be worked on more. You see Yagyavalk, the way he is addressing the women issues. Manu is always quoted in a wrong context. But you see Manu, how liberal he is towards women. I can quote one example, and I think I can explain Manu to you all. Manu is saying that if a daughter is unmarried and father is no more, if she is having 4 brothers, all the 4 brothers need to give 1/4 of their share to meet the expenses of that daughter. And they are bound to give it. It's not their choice. It's mandatory for them to meet the expenses. Manu is very liberal towards daughters. And daughters are the soft, all the Smritikaras have a soft corner for the daughters. When we come to Mitakshara and Daibhaga, again you see the kind of provisions that they have made for the women folk of India. They are meeting the needs of the time. We cannot superimpose our modern wisdom, and when we cannot say that they were not given the property rights. India was an agrarian state. And agriculture was the prime occupation, and the entire population was largely depending on agriculture. So land cannot be segmented or cut apart and given away to the women, to the daughters. So in the given constraints, liberal provisions have been made so that the demands of the state, of the economy, and the population is equally met. So if we see in that light, we'll see that the best that they could do, they had done in their law by giving them the liberal provisions. It's only that we need to have a right perception towards it. Nazar or nazariya badaliye, nazara apne aap badal jata hai. We need to have a right perception towards the women folk in early India and need to recognize their contribution to the state and economy. So Anjali ji, this is what
this is great. We'll let you have a sip of water while we gather people's questions. And I know you had mentioned this already, Anita ji, but for those who came in late and were not on time, will you please again mention how you said that there's no equivalent of the word slavery. Dasa and dasi does not mean slaves, but then we're just kind of bound by the English language, so we're forced to use this. I think there's some chit chat going on about how, this is not so. And yes, we recognize this. Anita ji already said it, but you probably were not on time. So Anita ji, just 2 sentences on that, please. If you can just say, reiterate that slavery does not mean.
I got the point.
Yeah.
This is what I'm saying. See, when you take the Western concept of slavery and you compare it with the Indian Dasi system or Dasa system, you will see the difference in the approach. In the West, you have slavery where there is slaves being bought and sold in the market. They are like commodity. And they are priced according to their body buildup and their capacity. And in the Indian counterpart, if you see how they are treated as the family members, the affection and the love towards the females, the slaves as such. I'm not talking about only female slaves, towards the dasas and dasis in the family and in the productive sections. I see in my own family, if the food is cooked, the first person to be called for the food are the domestic helpers. We call them first, and we ensure that they have had their food first, and only then the other family members would have. I've seen the way we meet their demands, and this was there in early India also. This is what I wanted to reflect on, that we have always treated dasas as the family members, and this word being used as slaves for them will not do justice to their contribution to the family, to the society, and the approach that we had towards them. It is both are not synonymous. This is what I want.
Yes, no, absolutely. And we know that, and again, we're just limited by language in some sense. These kind of decolonizing efforts are exactly what Indology and Indicism is all about, which is why we have this organization, right? So for those who haven't checked out our papers from the first issue, please do so, because we welcome PhD scholars who want to work on this, even changing the narrative, even changing, the actual terms and names of how we refer to these things. Even Indian feminism, right? It's not the same thing that we see in the West. I mean, we're just kind of forcefully taking an idea, trying to fit a round into a square, and vice versa. Doesn't obviously work, because I mean, there was no need, again, to create some fake issue to have them even fake problems, solutions to that. So Gayatri N has a question. I will let her, allow her to unmute and ask her question, please. Gayatri, are you able to unmute?
Yeah.
There you go.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you, Dr. Anjali ji, for this opportunity to hear Dr. Anita Singh. This is a wonderful presentation, very informative. Thanks a lot for it. Dr. Anita Singh, I would like to speak about two things. Like, for example, in the end, you spoke about the Dayabhaga and Mitakshara system, how property laws were meant to actually we should kind of understand that land was a unit, an economic unit to keep the family together. The kutumba stays together because of the land. And what we had in the Mitakshara system, which is generally criticized, is the four generations where four generations male-wise, how the land goes and how the females don't get as daughters. But I would say they get a portion as a wife, right? So it's not that women are not given land. I mean, they are not given the property share. They do get as wife during partition. And why the daughters were not given is because during their marriage, they were given stridhan, which is equivalent of their share in terms of money, jewelry, and such things.
Yes, exactly.
And another reason being, most of the women were married in other villages. So it's not practical again, because you had contiguous land there. You can't partition a portion of land and give it to another family and expect the other family to come and cultivate the land. It's simply impractical to do it. So we had this Mitakshara system where it went through the male, and we had the Marmakattayam laws, or the matrilineal system, where it went through the females, and the male member of the family did not have a right to it. It exists in Kerala. They abolished it in 1970s, due to which now Kerala is, the Hinduism in Kerala is completely in shambles. We are facing an existential threat there, mainly because we completely destroyed the property system, because once the land is gone, the family also completely goes asunder. You lose the joint family, and then you come to nuclear. Even nuclear now, I was going to ask you. So how do these kind of laws that you had after independence, so-called the Hindu law that we have of Succession Act, or the Hindu Marriage Act, what kind of an effect it had in breaking the family as a unit, the kutumba? It is the kutumba which runs the Hinduism, or it is the main strength of Hinduism. So that is one thing that I would like to ask you. So do we need to revisit those laws? And secondly, and that is why the UCC is not going to work. I'm against the UCC. So that again, I would like to ask you, because the feminine plays a very important role there too. And secondly, there is now a tendency to completely obviate the feminine gender in families too. You have now gay marriage and God knows what, some lesbian marriage and such things where the sexes, both the sexes are important. The feminine, the quality where she nurtures, she's the food provider, she's nurtures a person, and even she's the first teacher. The woman has always been the first teacher for their children. So how this is being obviated in our families now? There are synthetic genders being manufactured. So literally, the feminine is being, even though they say it is, we are working for the feminine gender. Actually, the feminine gender is being obviated completely. So what would you?
Okay, I know it's super rude to interrupt, but I'll add to this too. Even the birth giving aspects are being outsourced to the medical industrial complex. So there's an obvious just kind of obliterating of the feminine gender. So Anitaji, floor is yours.
Thank you, ma'am. Gayatri, ma'am, I totally agree with you. I agree word by word with you. India had always been a society where land was the basis of our sustenance, largely. And when that is the fact, you cannot have a law where you can segment the land and give it away. And that's why we had the best provisions considering it, because the agriculture should go on. At any cost, it should not get affected, because ultimately you need food at your table, you need to have something. And if it is fragmented, the agriculture, the productivity would suffer. So Mitakshara, Yagyaval, and he has made the best provision that he is considering for the first time the wife as a dayar. So that in her name, the land is continued in the family and the kutum factor is maintained. And that is the reason the daughters were compensated in the form of stridhana. And we have now again, when we take up stridhana, it is not the dowry of the present society. Stridhana was the best means of compensating the daughter, and there was a large categorization of stridhana. You had all immovable things that you can give to a daughter. Only the thing is that land, because it cannot be given away, because she is married to some other village and she's going off, she cannot take the land along with her, and she cannot come and do the tilling here. Even that is not feasible. Even to this day, as you talked that what is the impact in present society, from the time we are having the succession right, women are having, daughters are having succession right, I don't see personally in the society that daughters are coming and doing the agriculture in their maternal side. It's not feasible, it is not practical for them, because they are married to some other place, and agriculture is a 24-hour, 24/7, 365 days work, and it is not practical and it is not pragmatic for the women folk, the daughters coming and doing the agriculture. When it is not possible in this day, when we have such fast mobility and we have access to all this technology, so we can imagine and we can think the kind of scenario it was there in early India. So seeing the change scenario, the lawmakers gradually had started incorporating women as dayars, and they had started giving them the right to property. And women, the daughters were, on the other hand, were compensated equally. When you talk about the same-sex marriage, the gay marriages, I would like to share, and I think you all would also be knowing, that this was all there every time in the society. It's not nothing new that has come up. In early literature also, we have references to this. In Kama Sutra, we have elaborate discussion on this, but this has always remained an exception to the society. We should not try to make it the rule of the society. All kind of lesbianism, gay marriages, whatever you talk about, is a part and parcel of the society. But that should not be legalized, that should not be like generalized, and that should not be made the common feature of the society. It should not be encouraged, and it should not, you cannot ignore also. That is there in the society. But it is definitely affecting the society, because these days we are having the different aspects of femininity that has come up, and that is posing a challenge to the society. And that is the reason we need to talk about this kind of topic, that is the feminism in the right aspect, right perspective. And that is the reason we need to talk about decolonizing the Indian feminism in history.
Thank you. Next question. Summer, do you want to kind of ask your question, make your comment for Anitaji to respond to? That's person still here. Yes, he is. No other questions. Come on, guys. I know you have burning questions. Anitaji, one more time. The 64 traits of a woman. Where do we find those?
It is there in all literature. In Kama Sutra, in Vatsyayana's Kama Sutra, we have the list of 64 skills that the women were expected to be skilled in, and that always, like, that was always the thing on which the women in their bad circumstances could fall upon. Like, that was the source of their livelihood if they are skilled in that.
Thank you.
Can I ask a question, please?
I'm trying to read the comments, some of the comments.
Sorry.
No, Vasanji, you can.
No, she was reading, so I thought I'd leave her alone. Oh, okay. No, see, I truly appreciate the scholarship that you bring to this. I am not coming to this from a contentious point of view. All the list of the different names you gave for the various kinds of artists, the different Dasis and everything. But I just question the relevancy of that today, because even this whole idea of house help, I come from a middle class family in Bangalore. It's impossible for us to afford house help anymore, because they are, first of all, they're very expensive. And second of all, they're very, very difficult to deal with. They are all very, for lack of a better term, aware of their rights, and they fight a lot. So many people have stopped using all these house help and everything. I don't understand the point of all this. You're dealing with this as though we are in some kind of Kalidasa or something. We are not. The modern India is so different from what you are describing in terms of women being exploited and all that. I just wish that we come to the reality of today, and also this whole idea of agriculture, land division. I don't know how many people have land anymore in India. I mean, I'm talking about middle class families which are like working in jobs. Most of them don't have all these issues. So even though your scholarship is very much appreciated, I question the relevancy of that in modern India. It seems like it's very irrelevant.
I really, I'm surprised how you see the irrelevance of this. If you don't have land, where will the state and the world would exist? Land has always been there, and it is there. Just because you come from Bangalore, you're coming from the cosmopolitan kind of a city, you don't see the significance of land. But see the people who have land. I mean, I have a land, and I know the challenges that landed property throws upon you. So I need to address that. And there's a large section of the society who are addressing it. When they are a software engineer and they have land also in their village, they need to meet the both demands simultaneously. They need to cater to it, because although it has got fragmented and it has got, and we had got a smaller portion of it, what we had earlier, but then it is there, and we are getting our food only from the land. So we need to know the challenges that the landed property throws upon you.
And I want to add to this too. I mean, if decolonization is not an issue, we wouldn't even be here talking about this, right? I mean, the fact that like 30 odd, I mean, this actually, I had as many registrants as we did for the sacred geography talk by Rana Singh. So I'm supremely happy that we're having this conversation, because it's extremely relevant. Force-fitting ideas that don't fit into our society and culture is where it's taken us to where it is, right? I mean, in a downhill path. So it is time to kind of clean that up, throw the garbage out where it belongs, and then take a look at how systems existed. So I personally think it's extremely, extremely relevant. But thank you, Vasanji, for your comments. Other questions, please. So Anita, while we wait for that, like maybe one last question. We definitely don't want to take up too much of your time. Where to from here? Like you are contributing all of this wonderfully in terms of academic research. Like, what are the next steps? Where do you see academia taking, this aspect of feminism and decolonization? Kind of give us a big picture view, because we will definitely be doing a feminism conference soon. Next year.
Yes, Anjali, I agree with you. We need to see women aspect. I don't think somehow I have tried to avoid this word feminism. It has a negative connotation for me, actually. I would rather say that we need to see women as such in a broader horizon, in a broader perspective. Let's see the approach towards the women, what the society is having, the attitude towards women, whether the society is sensitive enough towards the women issues or not. We call it in Hindi. I don't know how many of you understand Hindi. आप भाव को पकड़िए कि भाव क्या है, स्त्री विमर्श पर आपका भाव क्या है. But the moment you have that expression, you'll have answer to all the questions that you have in your mind. And women would no more be a matter of discussion as we are discussing right now. They are not the marginalized section of the society. We should not be talking and discussing and having a discourse on women issues if we had the right perspective towards women. Had we known it earlier, we would not have been discussing it right now. But high time, we need to take this discourse further, and we need the generation and the coming generations to have a right perspective of womanhood, woman, and the role of woman in society. And that is why this topic becomes even more relevant in the present scenario. The more you are heading towards modernity, advancement, and the women are facing complex issues. The working women in present scenario are having multiple challenges. So they need to have a right kind of orientation towards themselves also. They need to know their own self better, so that they are strong enough mentally, they are strong enough physically to face the challenges. This is what I feel, Anjali.
Okay, thank you. Last two things. I think Summer has a question, and then Priyanka ji's comments will kind of round us out, and that's where we'll stop. Summer's question is, one question I have is, why or how did female militia become an aberration and not the norm? There seems to be no continuity.
Exactly. This is what I say. The moment we have this kind of Indian ideals recognized by us, the moment we see Lakshmi Bai, Rani Lakshmi Bai as our ideal, the moment we see Avanti Bai as our ideal, Ahilya Bai as our ideal, we'll start having a female militia in India. And it's not only getting inducted in the military that you'll be a female soldier. In everyday fight also, you need to be a soldier, because I have seen my female folk from my village, how brave they were. They never had a training. They never had any kind of orientation or training or education or whatever, so you may call it. But they all were brave ladies. I've seen them fighting in agriculture sector. I've seen fighting and combating the situations in the daily life, and I've seen them fighting on grounds also when they are facing some opponents. The way they come out and they save their kutumb and their village, and the way they die for their land. We need the right kind of perception for that.
Thank you. Priyanka ji, your turn, please. Priyanka ji is my colleague, by the way, guys. I am, faculty associated with Indology Academy, and also the publishing editor for the journal. So Priyanka ji, floor is yours.
Namaste, Anjali ji. Namaste, everyone. Namaste, Anita ji. Thank you very much. Hello. Anita ji is my friend also. So sorry, I'm a little low today. So it's very nice to hear you, Anita, after a long time. And I must say, today we are at the juncture where, the false narrative all around. And it's a need of our to go back to history, just read and research, review our texts, and take it into consideration into our thoughts, not looking the things according to the Western perspective. So I think it's very relevant. The topic is relevant. You did it very well, Anita ji, in your book, and I already read it. And today I got another chance to see it through your eyes and your thoughts. And it's very nice. I must say thank you. Your very insightful, informative session this is. And at the end, we can say, Yat narestu pujante ramante tatra devata. Thank you for your wonderful session. Thank you, Anjali.
Thanks, Priyanka.
No, thank you, everyone. And one last thing, Anita ji, this conversation is not over. Like I said, Anita ji also serves on the editorial board of the journal. So this is not the last time we will hear from her. Maybe next time we can bring you in to talk about the specific legal aspects that you mentioned, right?
Definitely.
So,
I would like
yeah,
to talk
so
about
this conversation is not over. And so Bhavna ji, this is just the beginning, right? I mean, I want people continuously engaged. And again, any scholars, PhDs, even graduate students willing to work on these topics on Indology, Indology, decolonization, please do get in touch with us. We have wonderful mentors, just like Anita ji, and we're just waiting to cultivate you, right? We want to use your human resource potential. So we are here, and like a sincere thanks to this fall series kickoff by Nari Shakti, and I'm very, very grateful. So we're trying to do these monthly webinars, so stay tuned for the next one. Okay. Thank you all.
Thank you. It was nice sharing my thoughts with you all.
Of course.
Lovely. Thank you.